An anthology on the bad, the short-lived, and the forgotten shows and events in television history. You are listening to It Was a Thing on TV.
On this week's Super Train Mystery, Hail to the Chief. Two dwarfs and a magician replace a presidential candidate with a double so real, even his wife can't tell.
Now let's go into some of the shows that ended in 2024 real quick. Okay, Tacoma FD.
Well, this was a victim of True TV switching formats, essentially. True TV now is the TBS Sports Channel, or at least the TBS Sports Channel, after 6 p.m. every evening. Unfortunately, these comedies, if they're not good and they don't get picked up by TBS, like Impractical Jokers, they're going to die on the vine. And that was the case with Tacoma FD. Perfectly good TV show, just a victim of circumstance, a victim of True TV not being True TV anymore that we've known and loved for years.
All right, Chico, this hit us both. The Quantum Leap reboot.
Then there was absolutely no closure in that.
Kind of fitting just like the original series. Long-running series came to an end in 2024. Curb Your Enthusiasm. But I will say, maybe had one of the greatest finales of all time.
That entire final season was just gold. But yeah, that final episode, especially the scene where in the courtroom, Jeff Garlin's character is talking about the salad dressing. The glare of death that the woman gave him after talking about the salad dressing. I'll admit, I haven't seen a lot of Curb Your Enthusiasm, but I think that was the best moment of Curb Your Enthusiasm from what I've seen. But yeah, that ending, very reminiscent of the Seinfeld finale, but it was a lot more enjoyable.
All right, Bob Hart's Abishola.
I kind of saw the end was coming when they decided to pare down on the number of characters and the number of episodes that they had in the final season. It's an ending, but it's not a surprise.
He had a good run.
I'll also give Billy Gardell a ton of credit. Over the last number of years, he lost 150 pounds by getting gastric bypass. And he looks amazing. So props to him.
NCIS Hawaii.
I want to say it was a victim of Paramount trying to cut costs where it could, because you shoot a show in Hawaii. I don't know if you know this, but it ain't cheap.
No. And that's what doomed it, I guess.
And yet, you have season 2 of NCIS Sydney coming in 2025.
Wait, they did an NCIS Sydney?
They did an NCIS Sydney. They picked it up in the writer's strike. It was a show that was already airing on 10 in Australia.
Oh, okay, so this is an actual Australian joint.
Yeah, but remember, 10 is owned by Paramount.
Oh, okay. That explains a lot. Okay, another long-running show coming to an end. Young Sheldon.
And yet the story continues with Georgie and Mandy's first marriage.
Yeah. Maybe now we'll see how Georgie became Jerry O'Connell. Maybe he'll finally answer that long-running question I've had the last almost decade. Oh, CSI Vegas.
I got nothing.
Chico's got nothing.
I'm a big CSI fan, but I was not feeling this sequel.
All right, so this was of the new Star Trek shows on CBS All Access / Paramount Plus since 2016. The original one that started it all, Star Trek Discovery, came to an end, Chico, in 2024.
I know. If a streaming app could have a killer app, I think Star Trek Discovery was the killer app. But the story continues. Because you got Strange New Worlds now.
Yes. 2 college-related networks came to an end in 2024. First, we had the Pac-12 network, and then we had the Longhorn network. And really, as somebody who subscribed to Sling in 2023, just so I could have the purpose of seeing these networks, there was like really nothing else on the network. Maybe the only draw of it was the football. That was it. Although it was fun watching the Longhorn network to watch random, like, University of Texas volleyball and soccer games.
Not to mention, every Christmas, spend it with Bevo.
Oh, there's one thing I need to mention. The Longhorn network not really has gone away. It got repurposed by the University of Texas as an app. So it has like its own like fast service on the app. And on there for Christmas Day was Bevo Home for the Holiday. So you know what I did at certain points during Christmas? I checked in on Bevo. And really, I shared these screen caps, guys. I think Bevo was looking at me during Bevo's Home for the Holidays. He was looking at me intensely, kind of like Teddy Jr. staring at Conan. But also,
I'm really surprised Bevo didn't charge at you.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, he was staring right at the camera. I'm surprised he didn't go on a full attack towards the camera.
But the Pac-12 network, kind of not a surprise considering how the network and basically the entire conference went to hell when all the other teams, aside from Washington State, Oregon State, bolted for either the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the ACC.
You mean they couldn't survive as the Pac-2 network?
Well, the conference is slowly coming back, Mike. So who knows? We could see a revival of the Pac-12 network very soon.
Well, it's going to be what now? The Pac-6?
I think it's now the Pac-8. Let me just look on Wiki. Okay, here are the future members of the conference coming in July of 2026. Boise State University, Fresno State, Colorado State, San Diego State, Utah State, and as a basketball school joining as a full member, non-football, Gonzaga.
I think it should stay the Pac-2 network, just me.
All right, Chico, the Umbrella Academy.
You know, when the world's in danger, the Umbrella Academy is the superhero team that you don't call because they will find some way to buck up the Herosity. Herosity? Well, they saved their biggest buck up for the final season because I've watched that season and it is absolutely unwatchable.
So this would be a bad time to mention the Acolyte, Chico?
I'm about to get on my soapbox here. The secret to every good Star Wars story is good storytelling. The creator of the Acolyte, I do not remember what her name is, but it seems like, and do not take this the wrong way, they were sacrificing storytelling for getting what she thought her vision of Star Wars was. Never mind that her vision of Star Wars runs headlong into established canon, which is why I'm thinking to myself, Kathy Kennedy is trying to destroy the franchise from the inside.
Oh, God, now you're sounding like those anti-woke grifters on YouTube, Chico. Stop it.
I am not an anti-woke grifter. I'm as open-minded as the next.
I know that, but that's what basically all I ever fucking see on YouTube is, the same stuff that's being said. And like, guys, can we just say that a show is bad? And it has nothing to do if something is woke or not. Can something be bad on its own merits? Not about what you believe it is, on its own merits.
Oh, this show is bad on its own merits.
That's fine. That is fine. I don't have a problem with what you're saying. But some of these people on YouTube just say it's bad because they want it to fit whatever their political point of view is. And it's like, No. It's like, can you just watch an entertainment show and just be entertained? And if you don't like it, that is fine. Like, it has nothing to do with what you think it is. Just watch it as entertainment. And if you don't like it, move on with your life. That's it.
The Acolyte is bad storytelling. That's what I have a problem with.
All right,
And
well, enough of that.
And Mike's just being entertained by this whole spectacle here.
Well, enough of that. The Grand Tour.
Amazon Prime's gonna do its own Top Gear with Blackjack and hookers and the 3 hosts.
I got a question. Was it the best streaming show in the world?
It tried.
Okay.
I liked seasons 2 and 3 more than I liked the original season, and more than I liked like what it became was basically a quarterly special sort of thing.
Is Jeremy Clarkson still doing Millionaire UK?
Yes.
Okay, well, he still has that going for him. That's good. That 90s show.
You know what the beauty of that 70s show was? It was not that it was a send-up of the 70s. It was an endearing family sitcom that just so happens to take place in the 70s. That 90s show will hit you upside the head with the 90s and not even apologize for it.
Yeah, that's basically what I gathered in some of the reviews for the show. Is it was just making 90s references for the sake of making 90s references instead of worrying about the story. SEAL Team.
CBS had really big high hopes for this show, and for a while it seemed like they were going to give it a second look, especially with the goings on of the writer's strike. But when a show is done, it's done. And you know, this was a really good show, but it had its time. It's really good. Call it a clean break and move on.
Going back from earlier, something being bad, that is bad, and not because it's quote unquote woke or whatever horseshit. Velma.
That was just bad writing, which is a shame because I love Mindy Kaling.
Yeah, there were so many talented people involved, and you produced this. All right, Lucky 13.
The game just sucked. I'm not even going to get into the financial controversies. It's a horrible game. It isn't how well you do that matters. It's how well you think you do. So you could get all 13 questions right, and if you don't have the confidence in saying you got all 13 questions right, you win nothing. But if you have the confidence that you got, I don't remember what the minimum was, 5 questions right, 3 questions right, you're going to walk away with something more than the person who may have gotten all of the questions right, but they only predicted they'd get 10 to 12 questions right. That is horrible gameplay. That's broken. And that's not even getting into the whole people didn't get paid, specifically talking about Gina Rodriguez and Shaq. You've got to pay your talent.
Oh, you know what I realized we didn't talk about in part 1? The whole mess with WB and the NBA. All the hullabaloo with David Zaslav bitching about the NBA and how they didn't agree to the matching with Amazon Prime or whatever. And then they work out a deal to bring Inside the NBA as part of ESPN's pregame coverage while still being produced by TNT and the hosts of Inside the NBA still being employed by TNT. Which, let's be honest, is a big indictment of ESPN in their pregame show. Your pregame show sucks so much ass, we're going to replace you with another show from another network.
One that's actually good. And the thing that got me about this is that for the longest time, David Zaslav's like, we have all of this stuff. We don't need the NBA. We get along just fine without the NBA.
And then he saw that fact that he was going to have just the NHL and AEW, and he was like, oh shit, I can't get by with the NHL and listening to Tony Khan. I need to have the NBA back. Oh, and let's not forget TNT now has like select first round games of the college football playoff now too.
And they still share March Madness with CBS.
Yeah.
And True TV. But I will give him credit. I did see some of the playoff games last week. They were not bad. I mean, the games were bad because they were blowouts. They weren't fun. But the broadcast was perfectly fine.
You know what was a trip? Hearing Victor Cruz on the Penn State SMU pregame, and I was like, man, that's a name I haven't heard in like 5 or 6 years. Okay, Blue Bloods. We're not going to have Tom Selleck's mustache anymore. But you know what? It'll live on in 9-hour blocks on Ion television.
Tom Selleck deserves retirement. I mean, he is 78 years old, I believe.
Yeah.
Let the man retire. He's had a good career. He was Magnum PI. He was Mr. Blue Bloods. I've never even seen the show, so I don't know what character he played. But still, he's had 2 really successful, long-running TV shows in the last 40 years. He can retire at peace now.
Let's not forget the 3 Men and a Baby and the 3 Men and a Little Lady.
Oh, no. Of course not. Classic 3 Men and a Baby. Should be on Blu-ray, damn it.
Where's the threequel that's supposed to wrap the story up?
Well, I guess we'll have to settle with 3 Wise Men and a Baby on the Hallmark Channel. That's an actual Hallmark Channel movie, by the way. But we're not covering that next year. We're covering the Holiday Touchdown Chiefs movie next year. That's right.
God!
Mike, are you excited we're going to be covering that next year? No. But it has Ed Begley Jr. in it, Mike. Are you happy now?
Now, what role is Ed Begley Jr. playing? Obviously, he's not Travis Kelce, and God, I hope he's not Taylor Swift. What role is he playing? He's not. Wait. Hold on a second. He's not Andy Reid unless he put on like 70 pounds. What role is he playing?
I don't know. He's in the movie. I know that.
Is he a major character? Is he like in the Santa Claus boot camp or Santa boot camp that Lifetime did with John Schuck? John Schuck had a big role. He was like the Santa Claus. Ed Begley Jr. has to have a big role. He's got to be like Lamar Hunt or somebody like that.
I believe he plays the father of Hunter King's character, and I will watch Hunter King in anything.
See, there you go. He's the father of the main character in the movie.
Okay, so he's sort of like Mark Summers in that Hanukkah movie.
No, wait, my mistake. Grandfather.
Grandpa, okay, that's even better. And the best part is Mama Kelsey's in it too. Mike's just shaking his head. Well, whatever. Okay, Chico, Girls 5 Eva.
Season 3 was just a heartbreak to watch. Netflix gave it like a handful of episodes compared to what Peacock got for seasons 1 and 2. It got a nice clean ending with that concert with their loved ones, but at the end of the day, it's like, that's it.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, Star Trek Lower Decks.
That was basically what would happen if you put Star Trek on Adult Swim. Full of references, full of fan service, but created its own brand of hijinks, and I was there for it.
The Talk. That was on CBS like in the afternoon for like a long time. It has to be over 15 years or something, right?
15, 20 years, that sort of thing?
No, not 20 years. The Talk, I thought, started after Let's Make a Deal, so that would put it at 15 years at most. And taking a look, it debuted in 2010, so it lasted about 14 years.
Okay, I was off by a year.
Well, somebody said 20 years. you're a little bit better at estimating time, Greg. October 18th of 2010, so 14 years and a little over 2 months.
Okay.
Yep.
But surely Jerry O'Connell has to be in something after this.
Well, he's still hosting Pictionary, remember?
Okay, good.
And also, Jerry O'Connell's been pitching some sort of casino app. I've seen him way too often on commercials on some of the fast channels lately.
It couldn't be any worse than the Ryan Seacrest ads for Chumba Casino. Let me just say this. Ryan, you've never used that app in your entire life. So don't even start. Although, let's be honest, Ryan has done a tremendous job on Wheel.
Oh, he's done a superb job. Well, with that out of the way, we're getting to the last segment, and every year the last segment is the in memoriam segment, talking about those who have passed away over the last year. And I think we're going to start off with the most recent, one that we actually just heard about several hours ago before we started recording, and that's Greg Gumbel.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think any of us knew he was sick.
No.
Well, I know that during March Madness, I think, he skipped March Madness for the first time in decades because of a health issue in his family. It wasn't him specifically, but maybe in retrospect it was him. But Greg Gumbel, just a great broadcaster. I think maybe took a back seat to his brother Bryant, but that made him no less of a quality journalist. David Soul, Starsky and Hutch. What can we say? That made his career.
And let's not forget this one-hit wonder of Don't Give Up on Us, Baby. I love that song. I'm not going to lie.
Joyce Randolph from the Honeymooners. How many people who broadcast back in the 50s are still with us? It can't be many. And I'm talking major players. Johnny Gilbert's still with us at 96 or whatever he is. But really, when you're talking about adults in the 50s, there aren't many left. Yeah, you get into the kids, you could talk about Jerry Mathers, Eleanor Donahue, talking about Fathers Knows Best. She's still around. But, you know, Joyce Randolph, she was almost 100 when she passed. Absolutely amazing. Tom Shales, somebody we've talked about in the past, maybe the best-known TV critic, unfortunately passed away earlier this year. Noreen Virgin, maybe not a familiar name, but to kids of a certain age, they remember her from Today's Special. I was a little old for Today's Special, but I remember Today's Special a little bit, remember who she is. It's just a fun, cute Canadian program. I think that describes all Canadian programs. Cute and fun. The New Liars Club. The Next Line.
Now, I do remember loving Today's Special on Nickelodeon, but I'm going to be quite honest with you guys. It was no Out of Control.
Cut it out.
Oh, Charles Osgood.
CBS Sunday Mornings. Up until, I think he stopped doing CBS Sunday Mornings maybe about 10 years ago or so. But also on the radio side, the Osgood Files. That was usually paired up with Paul Harvey in this area. So from like 11:30 to noon on the news radio station here, you had Paul Harvey for the first like 20, 25 minutes. And then you had Charles Osgood doing like 11:50 to noon or 11:55 to noon. Just a great broadcaster, a great journalist.
Carl Weathers. That was a tough one this year.
We had just seen him on the latest season of The Mandalorian. He was absolutely owning every scene he was in.
But let's not forget two of his memorable roles. Of course, Apollo in the Rocky movies, but also Chubbs and Happy Gilmore. And as we speak right now, I believe Netflix just released a teaser to Happy Gilmore 2, which is coming out in 2025. So I'm looking forward to that. Oh, Chico, Sweet Pea.
Oh, from Puppy Bowl 20.
Yeah.
And this created huge internet buzz because between the recording of Puppy Bowl 20 and the airing, Sweet Pea passed away. And that, I think, shook up the internet more than anything. Because this puppy, how does a puppy just perish in a number of months? I mean, I understand the hows and whatnot, but you don't expect it.
Okay. Richard Lewis.
If Don Rickles is the king of sarcasm, Richard Lewis is the king of self-deprecation.
He's the king of neuroticism. Anything But Love, a great comedy with Jamie Lee Curtis back in the late 80s, early 90s. But as of late, he was a regular on Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I know he did some stuff in that final season before he passed away. So he did have posthumous appearances throughout that entire final season.
Chris Mortensen from ESPN. And I will say, maybe like one of the very first NFL insiders on television. Like without Chris Mortensen, you don't have your Adam Schefters and your Ian Rappaports today. Steve Lawrence.
Best known as a singer, his wife is Edie Gourmet. Definitely some old Hollywood there.
I believe was on Super Train, if I'm not mistaken. Louis Gossett Jr.
I'm smiling because of what we put down him as known for.
Not an officer and a gentleman. No, we put the Powers of Matthew Starr. Not Iron Eagle. No, the Powers of Matthew Starr.
Well, admittedly, this is a TV podcast, so we do want to make it TV-centric. So I guess we're sort of hamstrung and need to pick the Powers of Matthew Starr as much as it may hurt some of us.
Oscar winner. And let's not forget Mike. He does have a card in Americana.
He does. I think I've got a Swatch card of his.
Same with me. I think I have two. I have one from Americana and I have one from Donruss Celebrity Cuts. I think I mentioned the Celebrity Cuts one on the podcast in the past. All right. Joe Flaherty.
I don't know. Maybe it's me, but this one hurt. Because I love SCTV. And, well, obviously, if you remember back in March of this past year, my money in the bank was The Completely Mental Misadventures of Ed Grimley. And even now on MeTV Tunes, 5 a.m. every Sunday morning, they show The Completely Mental Misadventures of Ed Grimley. And it still cracks me up every time. That is such an underrated show, and I'm glad it's getting a second life. Or actually probably like a third life, because it did rerun on Cartoon Network. But I'm glad a new audience, 36 years later, is getting a chance to live the Ed Grimley experience.
And Count Floyd. Let's not forget Count Floyd. He was the man.
Count Floyd is the reason we're adding Joe Flaherty to The Completely Mental Misadventures of Ed Grimley, because in every episode, there's a 3 or 4 minute segment of Count Floyd, which is absolutely bizarre, hilarious. I think it's just typical Joe Flaherty, Martin Short humor right there.
All right, Chico. Sam Rubin. That was a tough death.
That was incredibly tough. He was, for a while, the Hollywood beat reporter for America, really, but mostly for Tribune stations.
Earl Holliman.
Best known for Policewoman, but I think he's almost equally as well known for being on game shows. Pyramid. I just saw, I think it was yesterday, somebody posted most of the NBC morning lineup from March of 1980, and Earl Holliman was on Hollywood Squares that day. he made the rounds, to say the least. And he lived to be a good age. I think he was 96 when he passed.
Well, this was a big death. Bill Walton. And let me just say, there was nothing better than a late Saturday night at like 10, 11 o'clock. You tune into ESPN, and he's doing color on a random Pac-12 game between Washington and USC or whatever.
Well, he was also one of the real fun personalities to watch on ESPN and ABC's coverage of NBA games. He really was a character, and really maybe the only character that ESPN and ABC had, especially when you compare it to the TNT side like we talked about earlier. Plus, also, I'm sure it's quite a sight to see a 7'2" guy wearing tie-dye.
I will say, the time he did a White Sox game was the most entertaining baseball experience ever.
It's on YouTube. Find it.
Roxanne from Beat the Clock.
She was huge around like 54, 55. But after she left Beat the Clock, she really didn't have much of a career. She faded into obscurity. But when she was on Beat the Clock in the 50s, there were dolls made of her. She was a very well-known celebrity, but her star really petered out after she left Beat the Clock.
All right, Jamie Kellner, the founder of Fox and the WB.
He made his mint finding an open space for raw, edgy content that other networks would not touch. Remember, early Fox was the home of the Tracy Ullman Show, Cops, America's Most Wanted, The Simpsons.
It was also the home of Second Chance.
You mean Boys Will Be Boys?
But also I need to mention, because it aired on Vice, the Who Killed WCW miniseries from the Dark Side of the Ring creators. Jamie Kellner was the man who canceled WCW and killed it. So he was the real killer of WCW. Oh, Shelley Duvall.
Again, another person from our childhoods. I think people would remember her from The Shining, and also she played Olive Oyl in the Popeye movie with Robin Williams. But for us, or at least for me, and probably Chico, and maybe to a lesser extent Greg, she was fairy tale theater on Showtime back in the 80s. She was the storyteller of our childhoods.
No doubt. Benji Gregory from Alf.
Brian from Alf. Such a sad story. If you heard about how he succumbed, he did not have a good final couple of years of his life. Really a darn shame. But hey, at least we have the Alf channel on a lot of the services, so we can see him really at his best. I mean, I don't think he had much of a career after Alf. Alf did make his career.
Frank Fritz.
He made American Pickers. With all due respect to Mike Wolf, Frank Fritz was the humor in American Pickers. And I haven't watched it in a number of years. They did have a bit of a split maybe about 5, 6, 7 years ago. But back in the early 2010s, I used to love watching American Pickers and Pawn Stars. Mike Wolf and Frank Fritz were such a great duo working together. Mixing the seriousness with the comedic and the knowledge and the negotiating skills. It was a beautiful TV show. And Frank Fritz, like I said, he's the backbone. He's the humor of that TV show. Even though he sort of went his separate ways in his last 5 years or so.
Mitzi McCall.
Wife and comedic foil to Charlie Brill.
Captain Lipshitz's wife on Silk Stockings. What else do we have to say? Well, besides Charlie Brill's wife and part of a legendary comedic team. And she did not have a good life the last 2 or 3 years of her life. So sad.
Okay, now we're getting to the main event heavy hitters. Jack Jones.
He sang the theme to The Love Boat.
I mean, whenever you think of The Love Boat, the first thing you think of is that song.
Next, Ron Ely. We could talk about him on Face the Music, but his name was made in the 60s playing Tarzan. And he was the Tarzan not for our generation, but the generation before. I don't even know if there is a Tarzan for our generation, because the Tarzan that Ron Ely was on was in the early to mid to late 60s. It was definitely a 1960s show. And really, beyond that, I think the place most people of the younger generation would know him from is back in, I believe it was 2020, I think it was his wife died, and there was a little bit of a legal issue. Not that he committed murder necessarily, but there was a big hubbub about that. Probably not something that a 82-year-old man would want to go through, between the loss of his family member, but also just the public display, what was being said and what happened. But oh, this one hurts, this next one. Martin Mull. Again, we'd be here for a long time if we listed everything he did. The big things are Fernwood Tonight, America Tonight, Roseanne. He was on The Cool Kids. But also in terms of movies, I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention Clue. I think that's where most people know him from, with all due respect to Fernwood Tonight and The Cool Kids and Roseanne. He may be well known for Roseanne because he was absolutely hilarious on Roseanne when he ran the restaurant with Fred Willard. But I think Clue is like where most people would recognize him from. I almost want to defer to Greg because he's sort of like our expert at Clue.
Well, I do have, guys, in my hand the Shout Factory 4K Blu-ray of Clue.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Does that have all 3 endings?
Yes, it does.
Ah, that's great.
And it has a whole bunch of new extras, too, on the Blu-ray, too.
Okay, I'm going to have to revisit that. It's been a long time since I've seen that. Next up, and this one hurts because I think she was ill for quite a while, and she passed at a very young age. Shannon Doherty from Beverly Hills 90210 and also Our House, if you remember that, in the late 80s, and also Charmed, a big name. And she passed, I think she was like 52 only, very young.
Yeah.
Screw cancer. That's all I can say about that. Next, somebody we've talked about quite a bit, James B. Seeking from Hill Street Blues and also Doogie Howser, MD. But we've talked about him in supporting roles on a lot of TV shows, especially as of late. Had a very lengthy career going back to the 60s. We definitely talked about him on 2 episodes of My Mother the Car, so that goes back 60 years. But next, this is another one that sort of hurts. I think it's not just because of his death, his passing, but also it took like a month, maybe even closer to 6 weeks, to report his passing. Talking about John Amos from Good Times and also Roots. I think when we heard about his death, it was the first time anybody knew about his health. Because like I said, it took a good month to 6 weeks for the news of his passing to come out. So I think a lot of us thought he was still in decent health.
And then this next one, not as much of a shock, but still hurts nonetheless, especially if you're of a certain age growing up with the Hollywood Squares. There was only one master of the Hollywood Squares, and that would be Peter Marshall. We also know him from All-Star Blitz and the Real Picture Show, not to mention his many performances vocally.
In addition, he was on Automan, but also he made an appearance on Sledgehammer. That's an episode I just saw within the last month or so. And he played, believe it or not, a game show host. Go figure.
You know, when I think of Peter Marshall, I always think the East Hollywood Squares from In Living Color.
I was going to say, I remember him from First to a Million, one of the game show parodies very early on Mad TV, where each question was worth 1 point and the first person to a million won. That's first season Mad TV for you. But this next one, oh my gosh, Bob Newhart. I don't even know where to start because we could talk about the Bob Newhart variety show in the 1960s or the Bob Newhart show in the 70s, or we could talk about Newhart in the 80s, or we could talk about Bob in the 90s, or we can go to the 2000s and talk about him in Elf, or we could go to the 2010s and talk about him as Professor Proton on The Big Bang Theory. That is a lengthy career. We just mentioned 6 decades with 6 distinct separate roles where he basically excelled at all of them. If that isn't the sign of success and longevity, I don't know what is. But I think even more amazing is he didn't get his first Emmy until the mid-2010s for playing Professor Proton, which makes me wonder, how did people not give him an Emmy back in the 70s or 80s? Because Dick Loudon, classic character. And also on the Bob Newhart show, Bob Hartley, again, great character. But alas, it took him until he did a supporting role with Sheldon Cooper on The Big Bang Theory to get his first Emmy. Next up, Chuck Woolery. We're not going to talk about his later life for obvious reasons, but he was the first host of Wheel of Fortune. Almost 50 years ago, he spun the wheel before Pat even touched the wheel. And way before Ryan Seacrest even thought about spinning a wheel. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Scrabble and Lingo and Love Connection.
Yeah.
He just did it all. Word games and Greed. He played Greed to the hilt. I thought that was great hosting of a cutthroat TV show. And he is Mr. Love Connection. Because we're not going to say that Pat Bullard's Mr. Love Connection. No.
We certainly aren't going to say Andy Cohen is Mr. Love Connection.
Before he went off the deep end, he was one of the best, to say the least. And next, oh my. This gentleman, I don't think is known for many TV shows, but his career goes way beyond TV shows. He's the voice of CNN, or was the voice of CNN, but he did a little movie in 1977 as the voice of the bad guy. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Star Wars. We're talking about James Earl Jones. One of the classic voices, not just in television, in all media. When you heard him speak, you knew who was speaking.
And let me just say, the People Will Come speech in Field of Dreams, maybe like the greatest monologue in the history of cinema.
Again, just an icon, an iconic voice. I think he was like 93 years old. Another person that I just couldn't believe was that old. But also, his career, I know, went back easily to the 60s. So you're talking probably 60, 65 years at that point. Definitely had longevity on his side. Next, the person who really jump-started the talk show genre, Phil Donahue. Yes, he was sort of a precursor to the Geraldos and to the Maurys, and to maybe a much, much, much lesser extent, the Jerry Springerses. But he was the big talk show. He was the person that everybody made fun of on SNL or comedy shows. Caller, are you there? And he holds up the microphone to the air, hoping the caller says the question. Just an absolute icon, and I really think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention his widow, who is Marlo Thomas, that girl. The last one I'm going to mention, I think around these parts he's really beloved, because I know when I watched maybe not Carson as much, but Letterman in the 80s and 90s. This person appeared relatively frequently. The Amazing Kreskin. He made somewhere in the number of 100 appearances on Carson. And I think the number I got for Letterman was in the 20s or 30s. But still, he's one of those people that when I look back on my childhood, when we as a family would watch Letterman reruns for 4 hours every Saturday, because that's what my dad taped every weeknight, was Letterman, we'd see Amazing Kreskin every so often. And he was always funny. Seems like he has a very great personality. And actually, I think he was the big person who brought on the ESP fascination in the 70s and 60s. Reason I say that is, and for some reason my sister bought this. I think this was just one of those things that piqued her interest back in the 90s. The Amazing Kreskin actually released a board game called ESP. I have it down in my basement. I've never looked at it. I don't know how ESP is involved. Maybe Kreskin used ESP to be like, you're going to spend $6 on this crappy game. I don't know. But he was just, again, such a fun personality on Carson and on Letterman. Something that I think we just don't see nowadays on the Kimmels and on the Fallons and the Colberts in this world. He's a throwback of sorts. 2 omissions and 1 late entry to add. The 2 omissions, first, Dr. Ruth Westheimer. She made late night television in the 80s and 90s very spicy. Talking about SEX. Second, Richard Simmons. Yes, he wasn't really truly a television personality per se. He did have his own talk show in the 80s. He did frequent talk shows, Letterman, and he was a game show guest occasionally in the 80s and early 90s. But his passing, oh, that's just so sad. And how he sort of fell out of the limelight and came back right near the end of his life. The passing that happened since we recorded this segment is Linda Lavin. She was Alice. Now, by no means is that a complete list of the major people who passed away this year. I'm looking at our list, and I would say there's easily probably about another 60 to 70 names on this list. Those are the major ones. We mean no disrespect to anybody that we skipped. But what can we say, guys? That's 2024. We've now celebrated 5 full calendar years on this show. And next year, 2025, hopefully we get some better shows out of it, some better news. Hopefully Beast Games goes away for a long, long time. Sadly, I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, I wish it would go away for a long, long time, like Time Machine.
Hey, 40th anniversary of Time Machine is coming up in about a week or two. January of 1985 is when it premiered. Just saying.
But we're not going to do it this week in Time Machine history.
Well, you know, Greg, if I had my way, little 9-10-year-old Mike had his way, we'd be celebrating the 41st season of Time Machine right now.
Yeah, but who would be hosting it?
Well, John, I almost did it. Okay, you know, no, hold on. No, I'm going to do it that way. Since I started it, I've got to end it. Who's going to host it? Well, obviously, it's going to be John Davidson.
No, you have to say it like you're taking a dump on the toilet.
Say it!
Okay,
Say
I'll try it again. Well, okay, I'll try it again. Oh my gosh. That actually physically hurt.
Mike.
Oh my gosh. I'm
Mike,
sorry.
Do
I'm
not
coughing up a
injure
fluid.
yourself.
Well, Greg said pretend like you're taking a dump on the toilet, and really, I was sort of like, you know, clutching my fists like, you know, I was passing a stone or something. John Davidson.
Man.
I think that's as good as I'm going to get, Greg. I'm sorry if I disappointed.
Like, this is why I tell them, you know what? Say it like you mean it. Don't say it like you're about to pop a roid or something.
Or hemorrhoid.
So, in the year ahead, I don't even want to predict what's going to happen. We've seen the whole Bally Sports thing sort of collapse upon itself and become FanDuel, and who knows what's going to happen with that. I think we're going to see a lot more streaming shows. Cable might be a dying breed, unfortunately, but I think we're going to just have to stick around for the next 52 weeks to see what actually happens in 2025. But before that, here's a little sampling of what to expect right here at this podcast coming in 2025.
How's that for pile driving, Miss Daisy? Now here's the secret. She's a stunt granny.
The United States of America would like to invite you to come spy with me.
Coach, finally, you kind of started the streak. Now you're 1-0 against Miami. Congratulations.
Yeah, it comes when you would least expect it, and we're very thankful to win it. Your defense just played super. We got some work on our quarterback.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The decision-making process to take Drew out in that one series. What were you looking for?
Nothing was happening. Nothing was happening. With another guy we didn't feel like was as well prepared, but we thought maybe he could make something happen. But he made two big mistakes that really hurt us. But we're playing with Franklin.
When you take a look at this victory, what do you take out of it for the rest of the chase in the ACC in a positive note?
Well, it's the first time in 7 years that we have beaten the University of Miami. And so we got another ball game Saturday. So we got to find out what our problems are. I see what they are. I hope we can do something about it.
And they are what?
Our quarterbacks have got to play more. Got to play better.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah.
I didn't want you making any rash decisions like Vince and Bonnie.
Tell you they're selling their condo.
What?
Oh.
No.
Yeah, they're selling their condo.
They're selling their condo? Well, where are they going to stay?
They're freaking out. They said they're going to look at studios in El Cajon.
El Cajon? That's the anus of San Diego. They can't stay there.
So far, my best client was Sophia. She had such a knack for it, I hired her as my assistant.
Amazing news. I just checked the lobby and we have 2 potential clients. What are you doing?
Bruce's emails to Lindsay have been getting more aggressive. I want your take.
You are still breaking into her email
This
account?
one came in at 10 p.m.
You are so unbelievable.
Bruce offers to drop off a file at her place.
Wait, are you kidding? He's using the file as an excuse to see her.
Yeah, but do we really know that? Maybe it's a crucial file. Plus here, she says it can wait till morning. So clearly she's not interested.
Yeah, no. She signs it Sweet Dreams.
So, sweet dreams or what?
Rex, when a woman says sweet dreams to a man, she's telling him to think about her. Like in bed. You may have to face the fact that Lindsay is moving on.
I need to eat.
Once upon a time, there was a vain queen who was so jealous of her beautiful stepdaughter, Snow White, that she poisoned her with an apple. But a handsome prince came along and broke the spell. Snow White and Prince Charming threw the wicked stepmother down a bottomless pit and lived happily ever after. But it turns out the pit wasn't bottomless, just very deep. And now the queen was very mad. But a spell so powerful even she couldn't control it. She put the Charmings to sleep for 1,000 years. She also got herself in one dwarf. Eventually, they woke up.
Perhaps an appropriate time for some quiet reflection. You know, there are actually some people who believe that there's too much hype surrounding the Super Bowl. Where they come by that wacky notion is beyond me. Still, it might be a good idea to pause here for a breather amid the pregame buildup. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you right after this brief intermission.
Faster than the speediest jet, more powerful than the mightiest rocket, able to fly around the world faster than you can say Super Pup.
And only you and I know that Super Pup is really Bart Bent, star reporter for the Daily Bugle.
We could never have done it without the help of Super Pup.
Oh, it was nothing.
Why are you taking the bow? It's to think you know Super Pup.
Shot.
5, 4, 3.
Roll film.
2, 1. Cue announcer.
From the WYN newsroom, the 6 o'clock report with Matt Cassidy.
And take 2. Good evening. The economy spurred debate on Capitol Hill today.
Facing unfunded budget deficits over the next 3 years. By Congress to join in
That's the guy?
bipartisan.
That's the guy. What do you think?
I think we need an aerial.
And wrecking sending his spending plan to Capitol.
What do you want me to do with this?
Is this the answer that comes to mind? Just put it in the bedroom?
What do you do with this thing anyway?
Little things.
Wednesday.
Sexual things.
Losses from Tuesday's sudden decline.
Interesting speech pattern for a newsman. You can go a long way on a pretty face.
Whatever the official outcome of this long-running controversy, one thing seems certain. As long as there are final exams, there will be prayers in school. That's the news. I'm Matt Cassidy. Good night, Beantown.
Trust me, I know what I'm doing.
After that very extended cut of what's coming up in 2025, oh, we've got a show coming up on Thursday. And this show, it's not a bad show. I think it's a show that gets a bad rap. And we've tried to justify the positive existence of shows like this in the past. Maybe the most abrasive, caustic comic of all time. He's the lead of this TV show. And let's say he's trying to get some recruits in shape. And hilarity ensues, especially when anything involving a female is involved. And good heavens, there's one person in particular that, oh, we're going to have fun with her name. We hope you come back for that episode to start the calendar year 2025 right here at itwasathingontv.com. Thank you for listening. Have a safe new year and come back for some military frivolity. Rawr! As a way to depart 2024, how about we go back 50 years, how they departed 1974 and entered 1975.
Listen, time is, we don't have time to do another question, so we ask you to come back next time. Next. All right, will you do that?
Yeah, sure.
Splendid. 1-0 in the middle of round one. And you were all just terrific.
Well, I'm not.
You're still in Las Vegas at the Sahara, right?
At the Sahara Hotel.
And tomorrow we watch for you on the CBS Rose Parade.
11:30, yes,
I'll
sir.
be at Newberry's Thursday.
Newberry's on Thursday. What are you
Me some
doing?
lovely things.
I'll be in Akron Friday.
Okay.
I'm at NYU,
At
New York
NYU.
Unemployment.
And you're doing something.
I'm doing a new series, and I may do a play.
Really?
I'll get modeling.
All right. Listen, as most of you know, it's quite obvious we don't have this thing down here at the end of the show usually, and the reason we've got it down here is because this is the last day of the year 1974
Yes.
AD.
Good gravy,
That's terrible.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That sign, I must say, has served us well.
Yeah.
And I say goodbye to 1974 with a great deal of gratitude.
Yes.
And as we say goodbye,
Another year has come
one
and
little
gone.
serious thing, though.
But there is no reason to
this
fret.
show,
We may not be such luck.
for over a year.
But we ain't dead.
Come on now,
Dutchie.
cool it. I was saying, now hold on. I was saying this show has been the highest rated show on daytime television for over a year now, and I just want to thank some of the people who are responsible for that.
That's
I
all
want
right,
to thank
Gene.
Mark Goodson and Bill Todman, and our producer Ira Scutch, and there are really too many to mention on the whole bunch who work here, but I especially want to mention the writers, Pat Neary, Joe Newstein, Dick DiBartolo, and Bobby Sherman. And to anybody who's had anything to do with this, all of the beautiful celebrities and the marvelous contestants we've had, it's been terrific. Thank you, one and all, and goodbye, 1974. It was a great year. That's the 1975 down here. 75. Happy New Year to you! And to you! Happy New Year! Happy New Year! Thank you. You were splendid. Oh, goodness me. Happy New Year to one and all.